Coming up, space launches.
Space controversy.
And space fashion.
Plus, we're going to be talking about innovation at the speed of space. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins Space Now. And welcome to tomorrow's Season 9, Episode 10 for Saturday, March 19th, 2016. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. I'll be joined by Carrie Ann and Mike in just a moment. But first, a huge shout out to all of the patrons of tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $10 or more to this episode. We are a crowdfunded show. If you'd like to find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. Jared, you're looking awfully funny this week. Hi, welcome back to welcome back to the table. Actually, Donna, do you have the image? There you go. That's where that literally is Jared right now, stuck in the mud. That is why he can't be here.
We may never see him again. Let's be honest.
He might be gone. So there you go.
Poor kid. He's the one who wanted to visit nature for the weekend, and so now he is.
He may need a rocket to help launch him out of that location. And speaking of rocket launches, yes, that's how I'm going to segue. Let's talk about a Soyuz launch of Resurs P3. And whoosh it goes. That happened March 13th at 1856 Coordinated Universal Time. That was supposed to happen a day before on March 12th, but an abort triggered moments before ignition. We actually were able to show that on last week's show, where for once in a very blue moon, a Soyuz rocket had a launch abort, which was a little bit weird. But 24 hours later, boom, successful launch. The Resurs P3 satellite hosts boom.
Yeah.
Well, it was more like boom, bigger boom. Much bigger boom, and you're like, really, just launch, just launch. The Resurs P3 satellite hosts a suite of digital cameras. They're looking back to the Earth in 96 different spectral bands. They're going to be looking at crop yields, vegetation health, microbial activity in the water, easy for me to say, and impacts of invasive insects on agriculture. It's kind of what they're looking at. They've got a telephoto camera with a focal length of 4,000 millimeters, which will take the highest resolution images. Their black and white imagery is going to have a resolution of approximately 1 meter, which is 3.5 feet, or 3.3 feet for those of you in the U.S. And then the color camera was going to have a resolution of about 10 to 13 feet for, like I said, for colors. It's going to join two similar satellites named Resurs P1 and Resurs P2, which launched in June of 2013 and December of 2014, respectively. All right, this is the one that Jared, and let's show a picture again of where Jared is at. This is what he was all excited about. This is why you don't go to nature. You bring nature to you. This is why right here. He was excited about ExoMars, and the first part of that mission launched on March 14th at 9:31 Coordinated Universal Time. Man, just
Beautiful
those
footage.
Wow, that was awesome. That is the ExoMars mission to Mars. It has the trace gas orbiter and the Schiaparelli. How do you do it, Mike? Schiaparelli lander aboard. Now, the trace gas orbiter is going to be, as you kind of get from the name, orbiting Mars. It's going to look for methane gas in the atmosphere of Mars. It's going to look for. The reason it's looking for methane gas is the breakdown of organic material itself creates methane. So that will actually prove that there is organic life on Mars breaking something down and turning it to methane. That's pretty neat. It's going to start doing that in December of 2017. And then we've also got the Schiaparelli, I hope I did that right, lander. This is actually kind of a precursor mission to the ExoMars rover that will be going in 2018. So it's designed to test the technologies of the ExoMars rover that'll be landing in 2018. So it's going to kind of go down there, land. It's basically going to crash land under the surface of Mars, make sure that that works before they actually send the real lander in 2018. The arrival target for the whole mission is October of 2016. Specifically October 19th of 2016, and also aims to take high-resolution pictures of Mars and search for hydrogen embedded in the crust itself. So pretty freaking awesome, and I know Jared's going to be excited because Proton launches aren't the most stable launcher out there. What did we determine last week? What was it, Mike? Like a 1 in 7, 1 in 8 failure rate, something like that?
I think it was something like that. The value changes after each launch, but yeah, like in recent years, it's been something like 1 in 6, 1 in 7.
So scary.
Yeah,
but it was successful, so huzzah! All right, good job, guys. And last launch this last week, Soyuz launched Soyuz.
Arm retracting, launch command issue.
Oh, all right. Well, we're going to have to wait for this really long ignition sequence again, so... Yes, the engines fire. Yeah, we're still firing the engines.
Flight speed, standing by, and liftoff. Jeff Williams, Alexei Ovchinin, and Oleg Skropochka launching to the International Space Station.
Oh, he did it for me. I don't even have to do it. March 19th at 22:26 Coordinated Universal Sun. That is the Soyuz TMA-20M or 46S spacecraft sitting on top with the 3 crew members heading up to the International Space Station. And it's going to be a busy time for those astronauts going up to ISS. We just completed our year in space, so huzzah, awesome for that. But coming up shortly, we've got Cygnus cargo craft going up on March 22nd. So they're going to have to take the cargo supply off of that. Then shortly thereafter, there's a Progress resupply mission scheduled for March 31st, so just about a week later. I love the little owl floating in there. We're not going to reach it in this particular show, so if you want, go up, hit YouTube, look up our launch library or whatnot, and go back and search for TMA-20 or Soyuz launch, and you'll actually see at engine cutoff, the owl just bounce way up out of the frame. It's kind of cool. And then, so after the Progress supply ship on March 31st, you've got a Dragon cargo capsule arriving at station on April 8th. And the really cool thing about that is that's going to be bringing with it the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, or BEAM module, which is a giant inflatable section of the space station, which will essentially be proving out what I'll call a space hotel. That's not really what it's doing, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to call it proving out a space hotel, because I would love to fly to a Bigelow floating space hotel. I think that'd be pretty awesome. Stay there for like a week, get like the concierge level, the club level.
Right. That's the thing.
All right, Mike, Space Mike. A few things went down at United Launch Alliance this last week. It all happened very rapidly and took us by surprise. It was kind of amazing. Talk to us about that.
Quite a bit. So the Vice President of Engineering over at United Launch Alliance, Toby Brett, he made some pretty controversial statements regarding the GPS contract that United Launch Alliance bid for and their competitors, SpaceX, and also the engine development on their future rocket and whether or not they're going to choose Blue Origin or Aerojet Rocketdyne. And when it came to those two companies and the engines that they're working on, he said that these two engines, he pretty much compared them to fiancés. And one company was like the rich girl and the other company was like the poor girl and had no chance. And his comparison was that Blue Origin was the rich girl and Aerojet was the poor girl. So pretty controversial there.
Outside of the idea that it's controversial, it's like mild, it's sexist. I mean, it's just in bad taste, it's sexist. And then he's basically saying, we don't care about Aerojet Rocketdyne, we're all about Blue Origin. What the heck? What the heck?
Yeah. Pretty bold statements to be making, especially since the company has been working with both companies, and it is not only that, but there's other contracts working for both companies to develop their engines. So it's pretty kind of a weird situation there. But also with SpaceX, he praised their ability to be able to land the first stage of the Falcon 9 back on December 21st of 2015, but called the whole reusability plan dumb, and pretty much said that the whole reason that they didn't want to compete with SpaceX in the most recent DoD contracts for the GPS GPS-3 fleet of satellites is that they didn't want to enter into a price war with SpaceX, which is completely contradicting their official reason for not competing in that competition. So, of course, John McCain is pissed, and he is launching an investigation into this Toby Brett guy and into United Launch Alliance as well. And because of all this, the guy resigned immediately. I mean, immediately, CEO Tory Bruno disavowed all of those comments that this guy made. And the guy has since resigned, and we're just going to have to wait and see if this is going to lead to any more serious consequences for the company.
It may. I mean, he went on to say some other really interesting things. In all fairness, I don't think he thought he was being recorded, right? He was back at his old school.
Yes.
No, don't get me wrong. You shouldn't be saying these things.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you think that this is a closed session talk, you shouldn't be saying these things. You shouldn't even be liking these things to other things.
Look, I don't want to. I'm not making.
He was giving a talk. It's one thing if he said these sort of things in the hallway with someone. It's another thing if he was a speaker and was saying these things to an audience.
So I'll say two things. One, you don't say these things even in the hallway to someone when your official answer is something else in your multi-billion-dollar company with national contracts. That's not super smart. But two, I don't want to make excuses for him. But he's giving a presentation, right? And it's hard to do that. And he's at a school, so. He's trying to go with the flow, and he may have just made
that's what every millennial wants is two fiancés, isn't it? Let's be fair.
I'm not making excuses for him. It shouldn't have been said. It was a bad judgment call, and it
I will say that when this story
sucks.
first broke, there was a lot of misinformation because a lot of people were very excited about things that had been said. And initially I heard they were like, yeah, the head of ULA was saying blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa. I'm sorry, Tory Bruno, homie, what? Like, because he's
up there.
But I mean, Tory.
He's not Tory, but he's
No. But Tory has a tendency to be very all ships rise with the tide. This, that, and the other. And I was very surprised by that. But then once I finally had an understanding of what was going on, and I was like, oh, Brett Toby. I'm like, that's a completely different person. Never mind. Yeah.
I'll say Tory Bruno is doing a fantastic job of making United Launch Alliance cool again, which is important to bring in new engineering talent. And they just didn't have that under the old regime. And Tory Bruno, I think, is doing a fantastic job of making ULA actually much cooler. This was a bit of a setback.
I won't even say cool, but definitely approachable and welcoming.
I would say cool.
And
he's
interesting.
On Twitter. He's on Twitter. He's interacting. He's engaging. That's pretty cool, right?
I mean, I don't even know who the last CEO was.
Yeah, I don't remember either. We've mentioned him on the show, and I don't remember his name, but I will remember Tory Bruno. I think he's doing a great job. This sucks all the way around for everyone involved. It should not have been said. I am not making excuses. All I'm saying is the situation sucks. That's all. So there you go. Speaking of fire.
Yeah, that's...
Somehow.
That's right. Well, speaking of being fired, let's talk about fire in the International Space Station.
Wow. Okay, it's not in the International Space Station.
You're right.
Oh man, didn't we just talk about misinformation?
Oh, we're great at that.
Goodness. So speaking of the Cygnus cargo vehicle, so Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, part of the NASA Research Center groups, is purposely going to set fire in space, which is just awesome all the way around.
It's awesome and generally a very bad idea.
Exactly.
But designed as an experiment.
Right, because they want to study the behavior of how fire spreads and acts basically outside of Earth's atmosphere. And this will be the biggest fire, a man-made fire outside of Earth, I suppose, or in space is what I'm trying to say. And the whole idea is that they're motivated to reduce risks on long duration flights. So one of those risks could potentially be something catching on fire.
That's a big risk.
Right. So you have to understand what you're doing, what's going on, and how it acts, and all that other fun stuff. So the NASA Spacecraft Fire Experiment, or SAFIRE, because...
Backronym.
Yes. It's a team of researchers from 11 U.S. and international government agencies and universities. And the first of three they have 6 planned experiments altogether. 3 of them are already built. And the first of those 3, that makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. Scheduled to launch on the orbital ATK Cygnus cargo vehicle on March 22nd that we talked about earlier to the International Space Station. The experiment takes place in a 3 by 3 by 5 foot tall module, and it'll be conducted on the return trip because Cygnus, as you know, just usually burns up in the atmosphere. So this will happen between coming off of the International Space Station and before returning or getting burnt up in the atmosphere.
That's a pretty big experiment.
Yeah, 3x3x5.
It's like a mid-sized lion.
It's like an adolescent lion, give or take. The data
That
and
probably
images
has something to do with the fact that there's so many cargo flights coming up in the coming weeks as well. I mean, we have the orbital ATK Cygnus, we have a Progress, and we have a Dragon, all within a couple weeks of each other.
Yeah, well, and I thought 3x3x5 was like fairly sizable. Cygnus is a decent size, but it's still taking up a good portion of that. So I was impressed that they were able to get something that large as just a, hey, you have to take this up and it's going to take up room for a while and you can't pack it even though it's a cargo mission and you have to just wait and just leave it in there for its return home. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the dated images will be transmitted to Glenn before burn up on reentry. And like I said, there's 3 out of 6. 3 of them hopefully are going to be flown this year, with the next 3 to be then built and then flown in 2018. Which is kind of cool. All again on orbital ATK Cygnus cargo resupply missions, the International Space Station, which I thought was really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right, Space Mike, talk to us about, of all places, Iran.
Or as some people pronounce it, Iran. I've gotten a lot of flack for that before. So Iran.
Wait,
anyway,
which way is it? Am I pronouncing it wrong?
I've been told that the correct way to say it is Iran.
All right, tell us about Iran.
So the Iranian National Space Agency is planning to launch a new class of rocket soon that'll be their next satellite launcher. And they've launched a couple of satellites in the past with their Saphir rocket. And with this new rocket that we see here in this image, this is called the Simurgh rocket. And with this, it's going to be a larger diameter first stage than the Saphir rocket, but its upper stage, which you can see a model of there, is going to be the same as the Saphir stage. And this rocket is actually really comparable to the same rockets that North Korea recently launched. And the two countries have been working together on rocket technology for several years. But with these kind of new images coming out, we're seeing that there actually are quite a few differences to the Simurgh rocket. But in any case, the space program hasn't launched anything in over a year and a half because of budget limits. That's the only factor that has been slowing them down. And they're preparing to launch this new rocket from a new field. There's actually U.S. officials who told Fox News that they could be launching as soon as this weekend. They could be launching right now for all we know. And they'd said that that was from an undisclosed location, but here is a picture of their new launch center. Excuse me, I have to make sure I pronounce this right. The Imam Khomeini Space Launch Center. I think that's how it's pronounced, Imam Khomeini. And you can see there from the larger diameter of the first stage, that is the Simurgh rocket. And it has a pretty nice gantry there compared to just the kind of ICBM truck that they used on their previous rockets. And according to a lot of some sources, they missed an opportunity to launch on the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, which is kind of the pattern that Iran has had in the past with their satellite launches, is launching, on special holidays for the country. And they missed that opportunity. And since then, some of their officials from the Iranian National Space Agency came out and said that there would be actually 3 different tests this year. A lot of people thought that this test from this picture here was going to carry a satellite. This is just going to be a test flight of the Simurgh rocket. Probably has a dummy payload. And there will be one more test flight of the rocket as well. And both of those test flights will only have 2 stages to them, liquid fuel stages. The first and second stage used on a previous rocket. But on the 3rd test flight, probably actually I should call it an official launch that they're planning to have later on this year, it will also have a 3rd and 4th upper stage engines that are solid rocket fueled. And that's the image that you're seeing right here. And with this image, I'm sorry, I kind of threw that to you early, Daddy. Sorry about that. But with this, you can still see that it has 2 separate versions of the solid rocket motor that would be able to kick up payloads into the orbits that they want to do. And with this, according to some sources, they're saying that the problems that they're having right now is with this new launch site being able to keep the pressures and the temperatures of the liquid fuel for the 1st and 2nd stages of this rocket in acceptable levels. And not only that, but they also have restrictions on when they can launch and due to shipping lanes and stuff like that, and they have to cooperate with their neighbors on when they can actually launch. So there's a lot of factors going into this, but I mean, the rocket is on the pad, and as soon as they figure out whatever these problems are, and they'll be able to launch this. And Iran's space program will only be able to keep moving forward from this, and hopefully even their manned space program will be able to get going on the next version of this rocket, which we can talk about in a future space pod.
Cool. Thank you, Space Mike. And Carrie Ann, take us into break with some space clothing.
Yes, I was super excited to hear about this. So X-Core Aerospace, which is based here in Mojave, California. Well, here.
What?
What?
Well, now they're based in Texas, aren't they?
They are currently building out in Midland, Texas.
Ah.
They officially are still based in Mojave, California.
I did not know that.
According to their website, xcore.com. So there's that.
They're
They're
halfway
adding.
between mom and dad's house.
I'm sorry, say again.
They're halfway between mom and dad's house.
Yes, exactly, right? They're adding another big brand to their collection, which currently holds KLM, Philips, Unilever, Luminox, and Heineken. And this one is called Blackladder. At least, I think it is. We're just going to pretend like it is. Which is a clothing supplier based in Sweden, and they make extreme work garments, things like fire-resistant, high visibility, waterproof, that sort of thing. I love this image. I think it is amazing. So what Blackladder is going to do is they're going to make custom gear for their engineers who work on the links, but also the training and flight suits for the pilots and passengers on the upcoming flights. X-Core, of course, is happy to have somebody to be making... I can't speak, apparently. Working with... to have someone who is making the... rocket test firings and liquid nitrogen loading now fashionable, right?
Yeah.
And then Blackladder is excited to possibly send some of their customers onto the 1 hour, 150,000 4G and weightlessness trip. So I think that's kind of the give or take there. Yes, which I thought was really cool. But they do make some really, considering it has to be work gear and it has to be that sort of extreme stuff, they are actually making it quite fashionable. I likened it to sort of a Dickies brand or Duluth company brand, here in the States. But they make stuff for all over the world. If you want more information, you can hit up blackladder.com/xquarter.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the speed of innovation in space. Hashtag speed of space. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Films on some expectation. This girl's a fascination. Nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Her heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into our main topic this week, first, actually, Dutta, let's do a checkup on where Jared's at right now. Let's see how he's doing. Let's see if we've got an update. Not looking so good, Jared. Not looking so good. I did want to thank all of the patrons of Tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who've contributed $5 or more to this episode. We are a crowdfunded show, and you can figure out how to help crowdfund us over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's go ahead and start talking about our main topic this week, hashtag speed of space. And that's talking about the speed of innovation. This actually came from a tweet, and I wish I had it handy. This started from, hang on, we're going to awkwardly try to do this. No, I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh, here we go. It's from at Macadenia. I don't know how to pronounce that. At Tomorrow, it was through watching your show, I realized how slow the march of space technology really is. And kind of got, we've mentioned a little bit before, space doesn't work at the same rate as like, a phone, right? You see phone innovation, although it's starting to stagnate a little bit, but you see phone innovation happen on a yearly or bi-yearly basis, whereas rocket technology seems to innovate on a decadal kind of like every couple of decades it seems like you get some sort of breakthrough.
It feels maybe something interesting happening.
Now that may not be entirely true, but that's kind of how it feels. So I guess that's kind of where we'll start, which is, it was interesting in the Apollo era, prior, JFK made his very famous "We Choose to Go," right? Speech. I don't know what to call that, but the speech I'm talking about.
Yeah, the moon speech.
Yeah. The what speech,
We
Donna?
choose to
At Rice.
The Rice
University.
Yeah, the Rice speech.
Rice
Yeah, but I
University.
feel like "We Choose to Go" it was more... Anyhow, you guys know the speech I'm talking about. So he makes that speech, and then less than a decade later, humans walking on the moon. Now, part of that is because it was a brand new... We had never done that so the only thing you could do is learn and enhance and create. But then it feels like after that, yeah, we had the space shuttle, but there was kind of this stagnation of nothing happened, right? We got the space shuttle, so we were able to kind of sort of figure that out, but was that really any better than Apollo? Well, we'll ignore that part of it, but there was no real huge what am I trying to say? Enhancement in space until recently. And it feels like a lot of things are really starting to speed up recently. So that's the main topic. I'll start with, there's really no question, Mike, other than I will give you this question. Do we think that the speed of space improvement, the speed of in which we're able to explore space, is starting to get much faster now that we have these new space entrants on the scene?
I definitely think so. I mean, from my opinion, I guess. I mean, we had 17 years of space shuttle where we were launching communication satellites and some cool science missions as well. And I mean, we have Hubble to thank during that time period. But I mean, 17 years of space shuttle before we finally started construction on the International Space Station. And in recent years, with all of these new space companies, I feel like there has been, and there actually was kind of a movement like this in the 80s that was kind of the first new space movement, and kind of the survivor or the big champion of that movement was Orbital Sciences, which is now merged with ATK to be Orbital ATK. And we have this new movement now where we're having all of these private companies and all of these investors getting interested in space and making a lot of things really happen. And it doesn't hurt too that we had some kind of people with a lot of ingenuity who set up all these competitions for some big things and some small things for different space innovation as well. NASA included in that group. And so I definitely think that there has been a really big kind of renaissance in space, if you will, over the past 10 years.
A couple of great comments from the chat room. How do you say that one? Amber Tiger?
Yeah.
Amber Tiger. Phones are also connected to Moore's Law, which is always going to outpace space technology. But I question why. Why does that need to why can't space technology be connected to Moore's Law? Yeah, we have a lot of... We're fighting gravity, which a phone isn't doing.
Right.
Right. I mean, I guess it is when you drop it. They're trying to make it more resilient. A little bit easier than fighting gravity. I get it. It's much harder in space. But why can't it be connected to something similar to Moore's Law, where it can actually enhance and get increased? And I think that comes down to what someone else said. I didn't start it. But basically the idea is that once businesses are involved, and it's not just government, the rate of advancement will increase. So same question to you. The rate of advancement of space, is that the same? Is it getting better now? Is it actually the same, but because we feel like it's new, it feels faster?
Wow. I don't know that I know how to answer that question, honestly. I think the thing to maybe take note of is that while we keep saying that phones or computers, every year there's a new one, there's something different about it, et cetera, and it feels like there's nothing new or different about something in the space industry, that there are a lot of things that I think, like, I know you're going to hate this answer for me, but NASA spin-offs.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a lot of, it's sort of like a duck floating on water. All you see is the duck.
It's a duck!
And I think we keep waiting for another duck to appear, not realizing or understanding that there's a lot more going on than just the duck floating on water. It's a bad analogy, I apologize. But the idea being that there are a lot of innovations that are being made that aren't necessarily directly impacting the space industry, but are coming out of the space industry. Does that make sense?
It does. So for those who don't know, I have a huge... I don't like the spin-offs argument. But let me clarify what I don't like about it. I don't like doing programs, like a specific program, simply so you can get the spin-offs from it.
Right.
If that's your reasoning behind a certain program, just go do the spin-off. Don't do the program.
Right.
Now, if you do a program and it serves a purpose and it has a really good fundamental science thing over here and you happen to get spin-offs, I'm okay with that. I don't mind the spin-offs, but you can't use spin-offs as a primary way of primary reason behind a particular program or a reason to do something. I don't just go do the spin-off instead.
Right. No, and I agree with that. If you really, for whatever reason, you are determined to make a better helmet for football, then just go out and try and make a better helmet for football.
Exactly.
However, there are a lot of innovations that have come out of not just NASA, but the space industry as a whole that, again, don't necessarily impact the space industry per se, but are still innovations. And so it's hard to quantify how fast or how well the innovation in space is going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, let's look at space. Space Mike, talk to us a bit about SpaceX and how quickly they're moving through some of their rockets and engines and whatnot as compared to what we had before.
I really compare SpaceX's program to the early NASA days. In the early NASA days, NASA and the organization before it was going through different types of rockets all the time. And at one point, we had 6 different rockets being developed in the United States before we actually had space launch capability. And, I feel like that with SpaceX, even though they weren't going through a whole bunch of different rockets at the beginning, they were trying to be innovative and improve on the technology. Getting the base technology that they started from and going from there and finding all the techniques and learning how to do rocket science in the first place, and then finally being able to achieve, successful orbital launches, and then just, going from there and plowing through with a new type of rocket, a bigger, better rocket, and having even more plans for bigger and better rockets in the future. And, even though, I think SpaceX was officially founded in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, so it's been a couple of years, but no one had even really heard of SpaceX, even within the space industry, until 2003, 2005. And so, as they've been doing things, I look at it kind of like the same sort of speed of development that NASA had in its first 10 years, but, maybe not in the same way, but under the same circumstances that SpaceX can, with the personal budget of Elon Musk starting it off and eventually getting investors. They've been able to innovate as fast as they possibly can, so it's not quite the same, but that's the way that I look at it anyway.
I think another way of sort of applying these ideas is that somebody, who was it in the chat room, Eor3061 said LASIK surgery existed before Hubble, but the programs to understand what and how to fix Hubble applied to make the surgery better. So I think you can look at that as saying, I can give a caveman all of the ingredients and all of the proper tools to make a quiche, but he's not going to know what to do with that. It's not going to mean anything. So even though the tools exist and they're given to somebody, so I think the way that we think about things and having the correct tools at the right time have something to do with the speed in which we feel as though something is being innovated.
Do we have those tools now? Are we at the correct time?
Because you can only push so far. You can only hope and want to do X, Y, or Z. You can only hope and want to do space elevators, a perfect example. We've been wanting to do a space elevator for I don't even know how long. There's a huge argument for it. Not everybody, but a lot of people really like it. They really want it to happen. They think it can happen, and we can only get nanotubes this big, right? Or maybe it's this big now. But regardless, we have a lot of these tools and we have a decent understanding, but we can't just force it into being. There's a lot of different things that come into play where, our understanding of things and the new technology of things and, forming different metals or different products and 3D printing things. And, maybe that'll help in a certain situation. So you can't just say, yeah, the quiche of tomorrow. Thank you. So it's hard to quantify the speed of something because it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of different factors. It's our understanding of what's going on. It's where we want to go. How do we get there? How do we make that able to get there? Making the tools that make the thing.
Right.
You can't just make the thing.
But have we made the tools that make the tools to make the thing? Or
in some cases,
are we one step before that, before we'll start hitting that innovative pace? Go ahead, Mike.
I think it almost goes into the kind of realm of you have to kind of play it as you go. I think the whole thing with an innovation is you need to be able to have a goal for whatever it is you want to do, and then have a very organized, incremental approach to doing that, and having all of these kind of sub-goals on your path to getting to your ultimate goal. And along the way, if you encounter problems, the tool doesn't exist to do this, or this doesn't do this, don't let it stop there. Figure out how to do that. And if there is no way, then then adjust your plans to still be able to reach your end goal.
So a lot of what we're seeing right now for kind of this next generation of space is reusability. This is something that's kind of people have dabbled in reusability for a very long time, but now it's actually being taken very, very seriously by more than one company. I can name 3 just right off the top of my head, right? And you couldn't even do that, say, 10 years ago, right? It was, oh man, could you name? I mean, was anyone actively doing it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure there was anyone at that point.
Other than orbital sciences, I guess.
So
In space.
okay, so.
It was all the X Prize participants, man. Sorry, X Prize participants.
Yeah, that's reusable too. Yeah, so
Yeah.
actually that brings 4 actually, so that's pretty cool.
There was 10 or 12 that had started in that contest, I thought.
Right. So are we at a point now, because of reusability and because of these changes and trying to push the technology to the next level, is that where we need to be? Or there was actually a really good question in the chat room from Green Jim 2 or II or UL. One development we'll see in mobile phones is modularity. That will increase innovation rate. Do we need more modular rocket designs? So, because everyone's quiet, I'll answer with no. And I'll answer with no because we kind of tried that, right? You look at the Atlas and you look at the Delta where they're quasi-modular, right? Not super modular, but the whole reason you have a 401 versus a what is it, a 501 or 542.
Okay, that's one argument. That one argument is, well, we tried that, it didn't work very well, or we tried that and it was expensive, or we tried that in X, Y, or Z. Another way of looking at it is saying, well, when we did it, we didn't have this kind of technology yet.
That could be true. That could be true. I'll say that I think the big thing we need to do right now to open up space and to get that level of innovation is to force that price down. And that's where reusability comes into play, because it could potentially help bring that price down. We haven't proven that yet, but it could. Modularity won't necessarily do that, not with today's technology. So maybe you're right. Maybe in the future, in the year 2000, way out. Once we've got old school Conan O'Brien there for you. Once we go, a little bit further forward, we figured out reusability. That might make sense. But I think right now, what makes the most sense is to help drive those costs down. Is to start cranking out the Model T of rockets, right? So you don't get to design much. The rocket will be able to lift whatever your payload is. You just can't. You can get it in white, or white. And it's this one design. So
Right.
if you don't need that much, great. We'll just won't put as much fuel on it, or whatever it may be. But I think that ultimately is what will drive that cost down in the industry right now. By driving the cost down, we'll start to see more people be able to do creative things in space, which will create more launches, which will create more interest in innovation in space, which will help drive costs down, which will create more launches. It'll be kind of a reciprocal thing, I think, at least. I mean, I could be completely wrong too. I have no idea.
Yeah, it sounds like the chat room, I don't get to say this much, sounds like the chat room is agreeing with me on that point. Whereas,
With the spin-off technology?
no, but everything old is new again to a certain extent. That just because something didn't work in the past doesn't mean that you can't revisit that idea with new understanding and new technology.
I think it's totally valid. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of the whole spirit of engineering, is to look at something old and make it better with new technology.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing with rockets today, isn't it? And that essentially what the Falcon and the Vulcan rocket are doing, is just basically taking old school 1960s technology and just optimizing the bejeebers out of it to make something new and more efficient and better and more awesome, essentially. That's what's
Lighter,
going on.
better, faster, stronger.
There
So
you
then I
go.
guess it comes back down to, is now the core time, or are we still missing a few steps, right? Are we still
I mean,
a
how do
few-
we know
few
until we
tools
get
away?
there, right?
I
You can't
would-
cross that bridge until you come to it,
I don't know if you'll ever
and you
know.
can't anticipate all the bridges.
Well, that's going to suck when you need to build a bridge and you're not sure where to build
I'm
it.
That's why you have to be flexible.
Yep.
Be like water, my friend.
All right, so that I'm curious to know what you as a community think. Are we in an age of innovation right now where the speed of space is increasing, and where we're able to do things not this fast, right? This is scary fast. We're not going to get a new rocket every 2 years, but we are starting to get new rockets every 5 to 10 years. That's a little bit faster than before. I would say closer to every 5 years or so. So are we at a point where the speed of innovation is increasing to the point where it's starting to become interesting, where it's actually starting to become something that could change humanity and create a true spacefaring civilization? We are currently a space visiting civilization, but we don't really do a lot other than like 6 to 7 people not a lot of people work in space. They may work on Earth for space, but they don't work literally in space. Are we at a point of innovation where that will be changing in our lifetimes? Leave your comments. Leave them on YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, using the hashtag #SpeedOfSpace. And speaking of comments, when we come back, comments from our last week's show, Cosmopolitics. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we start talking about hashtag Cosmopolitics, I'd like to... Carrie Ann's giving me a hard time. I'd like to thank all of the citizens of Tomorrow who have helped make this specific segment of this episode happen. Man, I do that every week. You'd think I'd actually be able to get it out by...
Maybe call it an episode for once.
I do. I call it an... Why? What's
Epicsode?
What's wrong with Epicsode?
You trip over it every time. That's what's wrong
Oh,
with it.
these are the people who've contributed $2.50 or more. They're going to get a copy of After Dark immediately after this, as soon as it's posted, at least. Also get access to the monthly-ish hangouts that we do, and their name in the show, and a bunch of other really cool things. But wait, there's more. If you can contribute as little as 1 penny per show, that's right, you'll get your name in the show and a few other perks as well. And I'd like to thank all of the people who help crowdfund our shows. And if you'd like to become a person to help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right. Let's get started with some comments from last week's show. I don't have a pretty slate this week, so I'll just tell you the last week was how do we make space exploration politically relevant? Hashtag Cosmopolitics. She hates that I do this. She wants to do this instead. Hashtag Cosmopolitics. All right, first up, Capcom.
This one comes from Doug Space off of TMRO.
There's a wall of text right there.
Yeah, but it's a good wall. I frequently ask people who the first man on the moon was. About 70% get it right.
Buzz Lightyear.
Okay. Then I ask who was the first person on the International Space Station. And to date, no one has known.
Buzz Lightyear.
Not even me. My point is that the reason that space isn't politically relevant is that in human spaceflight, we aren't doing inherently amazing things. Waiting 20 years for a crew to go to the vicinity of Mars isn't going to help. We need a lower cost strategy for returning to the moon to establish humanity's first permanent foothold in space.
Yeah, that's a show we should actually do is hashtag Moon or Mars first. Have we done that one yet?
Yes.
We have done that?
Yes.
All right, never mind. So that's a show I should go back and review is Moon or Mars first. Well, we do a lot of shows.
That's where we need to bring in 2 guests in studio and have a debate.
Oh, that would actually be fun. We need to do it all political style, right? Make the moon great again, make Mars great again.
Yeah.
That would be... a lot of people are moon first.
Maston's on the moon first side, right?
Yeah, who do we get? Zubrin. Matt. Oh my goodness. That would be fantastic.
I don't
wouldn't
think
it?
Dave would show up if Zubrin was here.
But that would be fun. That would be fun.
Buzz Aldrin might show up.
Yeah. Buzz Aldrin's all about going
To
to
be
Mars.
the guy to argue for Mars, that would be amazing.
That would be awkward, I think. I think that would be super awkward. All right. So, yes, I agree. I think we need to shorten these timelines. Actually, much to today's show's point of speed of space is if we can do things faster, make them more interesting. We're living in a society now with instant gratification, and the speed of aerospace just isn't keeping up. And we need it to if we want to keep people interested and investing and doing really cool things. And I think that's happening. I think hopefully it's happening, and we'll start to see some neat stuff, which will eventually lead to a permanent colony on the moon, and I think a permanent colony on Mars too. I'm in the moon first camp as well. So, all right, next up, Capcom.
This one comes from Cody SB05 off of YouTube. I believe one of the best ways we can get people excited about space is simply just to bring up space topics in your daily life, whether it is to your coworkers, friends, or family. Create a conversation and show them the amazing things that they have been and are possible to accomplish. I can't believe how little some people are aware of.
Absolutely, and I think one of the keys, which is really hard to do, and I fail at constantly, is not to mock them, because I like mocking people. But if someone doesn't know something, so what, right? That's just that's ignorance. You can give them the knowledge, and if they're interested, it's a great way to relight that passion of space that I think most people had as a child. Like, you look up, you see the stars. There's this connection that you feel. This, at least I will speak for myself. There's a connection there that you kind of lose in your teen years because hormones, and then you may or may not get it back. And so if you can help someone find that connection again, what a really cool thing. And then show them the show, because hopefully they can become part of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you just snort?
Because that was hilarious.
Yeah, let's keep it together.
Our biggest fanboy's always been Mike. So
Next up, Capcom.
this one comes from Damien Sellis, also off of YouTube. Oh, goodness. I believe Star Trek had an average of 20 million viewers and maybe 30 for the premieres. If all of them, somehow, were inspired to contribute the cost of a satellite TV subscription, around $80, but paid once a year, private space exploration could be going ahead with $2.4 billion annually.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do believe that someday, we were talking earlier about you need certain things to be in place before you can move on, and I think crowdfunding. Obviously, we believe in crowdfunding on this show, which was a huge 180 from you go back to like season 3, and I'm like, crowdfunding, and now we crowdfund this show almost entirely. I think crowdfunding is growing. I was obviously wrong about crowdfunding. It's freaking amazing. And, the neat thing is then it's partly yours, right? So you help crowdfund a space program. You're part of that space program. You help make that space program go. That's not something you can, you pay tax dollars for NASA, but there's something different about going, nope, I'm going to actively give you additional money. I'm going to give you money. This is something I choose to do. I am part of this. I think there's something very powerful there. I also do not believe that crowdfunding is to the level in which we could raise $2.4 billion annually. I think the biggest crowdfunding programs are still in the millions, or many, many millions, like tens of millions, right? Anyone know for certain? It's tens.
I think the only way that would ever happen is if NASA could crowdfund. There'd be a lot of legal. I brought that up before, and there's no way it's legal to do that. But if they could, I wish I could donate more than that tenth of a penny from my taxes to NASA. I would.
I don't think that's the only way, though. I don't think that's the only way. I think the timing right now is indeed wrong. I don't think it would work right now. But if someone had a viable plan, let's use Dave Maston as an example. He's not doing this, but I'll just throw out an example. He's got propulsion tech. He's got landing tech. He's got a good chunk of the tech necessary to go to the moon. If Dave Maston said, you know what, I want to crowdfund Maston's space program. Let's see how far we can go, and can actually make some glossy things that keep people interested.
Right.
I bet he could get pretty far. He wouldn't get $2.4 billion annually, but I bet he could get enough to land something or someone on the moon pretty quickly. However, I don't know how sustainable that is in the long term, because something like this needs recurring revenue like a Patreon model.
Right.
And I just don't know if, as society, we're quite at that level where we trust crowdfunding yet. We trust that the program would follow through and it would get us what we want. But how amazing would it be? How amazing, the space program of tomorrow, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, that would be really, because, like, for instance, I don't know how many people shop on Amazon.com, but you can go to Amazon.com, and one of the cool little sort of side things that they do is that you can actually you can sign up to do these donations and you can pick your charity, and it's pretty much automatic for the most part. You pick it out and you go, yep, every time I purchase something, a little bit goes over there. I'm totally cool with that. No big deal. Don't have to think about it ever again. And it would be nice to have something like that for either a space program that I believe in, or a space company that I believe in, or
If Blue Origin gave me more data,
a
like
particular project that I believe in.
right, if Blue Origin told me more stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or even if they limited it to people who just gave them some money on the side
Mm-hmm.
through Amazon purchases or something like that, Bezos kind of thing, I would totally do that. I
Yeah.
would give
Bezos-y
Blue Origin,
Bezos.
yeah, right. But right, if you're ordering, because we order a boatload of stuff, I can't tell you how many Amazon boxes we have sitting back over there. Stupid amounts, right? Because it's awesome. But if I could say, all right, round up to the nearest dollar and give the rest to Blue Origin,
Right.
all I want in return is you can't keep your launches secret from me.
Yeah.
Right? I need to know what's going on. And if you told me what's going on, I would totally do that. I would absolutely back them like that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And even when you do crowdfund space projects, because there's already been a lot of different space projects that have been successfully crowdfunded. I mean, Planetary's Light Sail, Planetary Resources, Arcid spacecraft.
Yeah.
And I mean, so there have been a lot of successful projects. And when I've donated to projects, it makes me feel, exclusive to get all the different updates on it. And then
You're
when
part
it
of the
does
project. You're part of the
Yeah.
process. Absolutely. But so I'm not talking about projects, right? Obviously, projects work.
I'm talking about a recurring program.
I'm
that would
talking
be
about an
a
entire
continued thing.
space
Yeah.
program. I'm talking about building a space program designed to send humans to the moon or humans to Mars or something of that caliber. Not just a single, we're going to build a spacecraft. Don't get me wrong. Those are very cool, very impressive, and it's awesome that we're at that level where they could do that. 10 years ago, not possible. Possible now. Maybe in 10 years, it'll be possible to crowdfund a space program, but I don't think it is today. If I thought for a moment tomorrow could crowdfund a space program today, we would absolutely do it. But I think the timing is wrong. Anyhow, moving on.
Next one comes from Taiwan, John.
Well, yeah.
Taiwan, John?
Taiwan, John, sorry.
We'll crowdfund the shows at tomorrow.
Yeah. Exactly. Taiwan, John. Sorry. Off of YouTube. Be careful what you wish for.
Are you yelling at me?
Maybe. The political relevance of space is what gave us Space Launch System. I almost just said SLS. We need more political relevance anyway. The broad majority of people support a robust space program and will continue to do so as long as NASA continues to provide dramatic success stories and gorgeous eye candy. A better question is, how can we unfetter more of NASA's budget from cost plus oblivion?
I think that's actually a very good point. However, I will say I don't believe a broad majority people support robust space program. I believe the latest numbers I saw, and this may be incorrect, but the latest numbers I saw was only 51% support NASA and 49 do not NASA program. So that is not a broad majority. It is a majority, but a barely majority. I don't know if those numbers are correct or true, so hopefully someone in the chat room or anyone watching can correct that data if it is incorrect. But your ultimate point of a better question is how can we unfetter more of NASA's budget from cost plus oblivion? I'll actually tweak. I know, Space Mike. Would you like to comment?
Go ahead and say what you were going to say first.
I was going to say I'm not sure it's necessarily cost plus because there are. Don't listen, Mike. Cover your ears. Wait, I can't quite do it. I can't make it happen. Cover your ears, Mike. There are times when cost plus actually does make sense. It can also be super duper abused. So the rate at which we use it and how we use it is wrong, but it actually is a program that could make sense. What we really should be looking for is how do we remove political influence into the engineering part of NASA? Politicians should not make engineering decisions on vehicles. If we can remove that, you remove the need to do certain things in a certain way. You remove the need to use 1960s technology in a modern 2016 vehicle. And now you can use modern manufacturing techniques, modern technology, and actually help reduce the cost of these vehicles for the same kind of payload to orbit. You can see companies doing this right now that aren't NASA. So that's what ultimately needs to happen. Make it not a jobs program. So Mike, cost plus.
I think that you summed that up pretty nicely, and I think the only thing that I would add to that is, I guess, accountability. I guess there needs to be a more accountability when that sort of cost-plus model is being abused. When we are, like we discussed earlier, when we do come across problems that we didn't foresee and don't know how to deal with, that's where cost-plus scenarios, might work and might be needed, especially for something that we have decided, to do. In the case of NASA as a nation that we've decided to do or whatever. But where it becomes abused is where the problem comes from, and that's where a lot of different, I guess, waste has come from over the years. And so I think that you nailed it pretty good, though, and there just needs to be just a little bit more accountability, I think, for that.
Also, you can abuse any program. Given enough time, if you can figure out how to game the system, you can game the system. A COTS-like contract, I'm sure, can be gamed as much, maybe not as much, but could be gamed like Cost Plus could be gamed. I'm just saying. I don't know how, but
I think that
accountants are clever.
Cost Plus it the way that Werner von Braun Cost Plus things. You know, he abused the system so that we could eventually have all these extra Saturn Vs and do cool things with them. So
that's okay. I'm okay with that. But that's just me. All right, finally, Capcom, take us out. What's the last comment?
Last comment comes from Jason Hunt off of Facebook. Don't make it socially relevant.
I actually kind of agree.
The question was, how do we make space politically relevant?
When so don't make it politically relevant, make it socially relevant,
relevant,
which will then inadvertently make it politically relevant.
Right.
Okay, so then the question is, how do we make space socially relevant? Maybe that's a topic for a future show? I think we've kind of already done that. I feel like we've already covered that. Maybe? A little bit? We've touched on it. Maybe not. So I think they're kind of hand in hand, but I agree. Make space socially relevant. Easy way to do that. Launch more, bring the cost down, make it relevant to people in their everyday lives, and that will make it socially relevant and important to everyone. All right, that's our show. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark is up next. I will be out next week. Jared, do we have another status update on Jared, by the way? How's he looking? Is he any... Oh! Well, it looks like he's out. Looks like he's out. That's good. That's better.
Yeah.
hope that's just mud and not a pop tire.
Yeah.
Assuming, yeah, is that a pop tire, Dada?
No.
Is it just mud?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, it's just
caked
mud.
on mud.
Yeah.
Hopefully Jared will be back.
He said, got a little too close to the lake, should have taken the higher route access or across sand. Oh well, learned something new today.
Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully not very badly sunburned. He'll be hosting next week as I will be out. Thank you everyone so much for watching. We'll see you next week.